Are we ready?
Yes.
Sorry. I was looking at myself in the camera.
Yeah.
You can just edit this out, right?
Yeah, or leave it in. I might leave it in.
Don't. Look, I can edit. Oh no! What's that? Hold on. What's that?
That's the Zara.
Oh.
John, no, that smells good though, doesn't
That's
it?
fucking good. Because I've got a sort of Oakmossy vibe.
Keep that. We'll save it
that
for later.
there, on the bar. Okay, sorry. Hi everyone.
Hi guys.
It's lovely to see you. Welcome back to the loft. It's quite dark. I'm scared. Are you scared?
It's not that late. It's just a very gloomy day, isn't it?
It's a gloomy time for the world, really. Things are looking very much down, but I think that we probably can bring you some joy.
We'll do what we can.
In a way, we're like the United Nations, aren't we? But just smaller,
yeah.
And our cafe's not as
more
good.
succinct,
more to the point, probably a lot more effective.
Yep.
So we've got some things here to heal the world and bring joy and knowledge to you all, which is...
I've got a little box of stuff. I don't know if you...
Yeah.
Ooh. So this is part 2, sort of. So having devoted lots of videos to talking about perfumes, we recently devoted a video to talking about what goes into perfumes with
raw talent
and raw materials.
That's what I meant.
We can talk about the raw materials, but I should say we are not the raw talent. So just a kind of disclaimer that neither of us are perfumers. These are just as I've delved further into the world of smells. I in particular have wanted to smell some of the materials that go into making the perfume. So I'm not a chemist, I'm not a perfumer, but
Although you've made some things which I've loved. Dan has put some stuff together, haven't you?
But that's just lucky haphazard dabbling, I think.
I'm not sure I would call it dabbling. Anyway.
But anyway, so we are not perfumers, we're not professionals. We are doing what you could do, which is go and we'll talk about some of the websites from which you could purchase these materials. We're just going to...
It's a fun hobby, isn't it? To just tinker and try stuff.
Absolutely. And in particular...
It's like learning the piano. If you love listening to the piano, you think, okay, how do you put that together?
How does D major chord work?
Yeah.
Speaking of D major chords, or maybe even C major chords, we wanted a material that is very much at the heart, Oakmoss. We're going to start by smelling some Oakmoss and talking about it. We're then going to go on and smell some rose, a natural rose oil, and some synthetic rose, and then we're going to smell some of the constituent parts of rose, some natural isolates and some synthetics of those natural isolates as well.
Not just a rose plucked and thrown into a perfume, as a lot of people might, myself included, just thought rose is rose, and that's the accord, the ingredient, and the note
are different things.
They're all different things. And I once upon a time thought that they were all one and the same. So this is fascinating for me as well.
And then we're going to go on to smell some more florals, and we are just going to smell the absolutes. And we'll talk a bit about how the absolute relates to how the actual flower itself smells, because they're not always the same thing.
And some flowers don't smell of anything. That's another thing to consider, isn't it? If you're making accords of flowers.
I mean, especially a daffodil, for instance. But anyway, we'll talk about that more in a moment. And then after florals, we're going to go on to resins. So broadly speaking, this video is Oakmoss, rose, more flowers, resins.
Yeah. So almost a little top-down approach.
Upside down.
With Oakmoss,
inside out.
Oakmoss at the top and the bottom of all perfumes would be my dream.
As it should be. So, shall we start? So we're going to start with smelling some Oakmoss. So Oakmoss, we know... it's probably the most maligned... Shall I just do one strip? Most maligned, talked about... perfume ingredient. It's been banned, it's been restricted.
It's like the Lawrence Fox of perfume ingredients, isn't it?
Very much.
Sorry, Lawrence, if you're watching, but cancelled a little bit, problematic, shall we say?
Yeah. It's been a victim of cancel culture.
I feel almost missed by people that don't really know what Oakmoss is, like myself included. I would smell things and go, I bet this was better when real Oakmoss was. And I have no real clue, because often I haven't smelt the real thing.
IFRA have not banned Oakmoss, they have restricted it to 0.02% of the finished formula, but bearing in mind that's the finished form. That's the finished perfume, not the formula. So if you have a perfume at 20%, so that's actually 0.12, which is still not a huge amount. Anyway, but
it's a potent thing as well, you know.
It is potent, and it's not just about smelling it. I'll give you that. And
Thank you very much. I mean, the colour is something I just have to show you all immediately. Look at that.
So the Oakmoss I got is from a company called Hermitage, who do lots of natural materials, and I've diluted this to 25%. And natural oak moss, if you were to try and go out as an amateur perfumer and buy it now, most of what you would see on offer is the low Atronol version, which is the more IFRAN compliant. This is not the low Atronol version. This is the full fat.
So complicated. I mean, I think all perfumes should be at least 50% real oak moss. All finished formulas, finished products.
This is only 25%, and it's.
I mean, it's so complex already. It's an entire perfuming experience in itself, isn't it?
It is very, and I think we should definitely leave it here for the course of the video, and so you can come back to it and smell it.
I'm going to write on it with a pencil, just Oakmoss, so I know. Although there's no mistake
on it.
Let's do that.
But I remember this is one of the first materials I bought because I was interested, and just.
I mean, that's the kind of knockout blow in a great perfume, isn't it?
And I remember just having it kind of on the side and coming back to it over the course of several days like this and just smelling it. So you definitely get this wet cabbage thing.
I'm working on that. Yes, I know what you mean. Absolutely.
But there's also this dry wood thing. There's mildewy quality. There's bitter.
I get damp wood.
Tobacco, rotten. Like an old barn which has been out in the rain and is like.
In fact, I mean, it's funny you should mention this, but I was watching yesterday the second series of this farm program that Jeremy Clarkson does.
Oh yeah, it's good. I like that.
It's fun, but they were leaving out the grain, and I was thinking, why don't you just build a barn that keeps it all in? But actually, one thing I was thinking about was the rain in that kind of barn combination would smell really good. Sort of rotten old wood and barley and crops, damp soil, even. It's so complex.
We're going to smell violet leaf later, and you get a relationship to that. But it's just it's so many things. It's green, it's tobacco-y, it's woody.
Greener than I expected, actually.
Yeah, it's very green. It's really cabbagey, isn't it? It's not quite as. I think the first time I smelled it, I had your kind of 80s masculine sheep in mind, and I expected this bitter punch. It's much more mellow and round.
Very round, very smooth, very elegant still somehow. Oh, that's really good.
So that was.
So, Oakmoss is still out there, and you will still smell stuff.
And it's not.
But it's not quite that, is it?
It's not. It's not banned by IFRA. And anyway, it's more to do with. EU regulations, which
that's IFRA trying to
kind of appease. So now over there, you better to go with this older sample. So we're now going to talk about Veramoss, which is one of the most kind of widely used. It's also called Evernyl.
I can't smell it now.
And I did warn you of this.
Dan did warn me because the Oakmoss is so
I did
so big.
So
can you smell it?
My Oakmoss is at 25% dilution, and this is Evernyl Veramoss at 25% dilution in DPG, and it's quite difficult to smell one alongside the other.
Yeah, I mean they're both so closely related. I think the nose is shutting it off, isn't it? So it's saying I know that smell.
Possibly.
I did smell it earlier though, and actually it was very good.
It is good, and it's very, and you would recognise it. And I think one fragrance you'd really recognise it from is Sheep Mousse by Oritia Legrand, which is a real kind of overdose of this. Interestingly, Baccarat Rouge has a massive overdose of Veramoss as well, which you wouldn't expect. But it's not only is it's much lighter, but it's nowhere near the complexity. Like absolutely not in the same ballpark. It's as if this Veramoss is it's taken a snapshot at 50 meters of Oakmoss to give you the impression.
Yeah.
Whereas Oakmoss, you have what you see for the snapshot, and then it keeps moving and moving and moving and evolving.
If you're going to talk in musical terms, the music is recognisable if you play the theme tune of Blah on a piano, but then you hear it played on a symphony
Schenkerian analysis saying like, oh, it's 151.
Yeah.
But actually, within that 151 cadence, there's a
whole
whole harmonic world of development and progression.
Yeah, I mean, I can't smell it, but I'm glad I smelt it earlier, like you suggested.
So now we're going to move on to something else, something very, very lovely, something very ubiquitous. Rose.
Been in a bit of a rose phase at the moment.
Rose.
I'm enjoying rose again. I have for a long time.
If you'd have to be an absolute maniac not to love rose.
I am one.
So this is a Turkish Rose Absolute from Robertet. So Robertet, quite a well-known oil company, and I've tried a few Turkish roses, and this is just, it's really, really.
I think it has taken me a while to disassociate rose from Grandma's Nicodor, sort of, with a little like lavender geranium.
Well, but
things,
we'll talk about this. But there are different relationships between lavender and geranium. But it's so like.
Oh, it's so good. And I have to say, I find that a little bit oak mossy.
Well, there's a huge amount of depth and richness and greenness to it.
I get like a woody tobacco aspect with the sort of freshness of a rose as well.
Yeah,
that's really good.
So something we're going to talk about.
I'd wear that on its own.
And Joe hinted this at the start, that an absolute of a flower. So an absolute has been obtained by some kind of solvent like hexanol to extract this oil, and so therefore it doesn't smell quite like smelling a fresh rose.
No, which I don't think is something that's often that overwhelmingly big.
But it's different, because often with, the way you're describing this rose, and I agree, it's very deep, it's very rich, it's very green, it's quite mossy, whereas actually if you were to smell it on the vine, you might have some more fresh, bright, they were the two words I was trying to say, citrusy, uplifting notes.
Yeah. But I find that uplifting. I find the depth of that makes me feel uplifted. The depth and complexity and the roundness of that is very joyful.
But I would say
it doesn't need any sort of big bright top.
This is a very, very expensive material, and I would say if you're buying a designer fragrance, you're never ever getting any Rose Absolute. Even if you're getting a niche fragrance, I think you're probably getting very, 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 very little Rose Absolute. What you may be getting is what we're going to smell next. So this is Rose Givco 217.
That sounds so romantic.
Yeah. So this
217.
217. This is a rose reconstruction by the oil company Givco, which is one of the main big oil companies. So if your Chanel's, your Dior's, even your Guerlain's and things, they are, lots of their fragrances are going to be produced by Givco. And if you get a rose, there's a high chance they're going to be using something like this or something very similar.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's not the depth of the Turkish Rose, but it's unmistakable.
So at the price point, I'm not going to say this with certainty, but I would say this is all synthetic. So, but it certainly gives you. I mean, it feels much brighter, doesn't it? It definitely feels much brighter than the Turkish Rose.
Yeah, 100%. More familiar.
Yep. Brighter, certainly.
It's brighter. It's very energetic. Much more citrusy. I miss the depth.
Yep. I mean,
but I get the impression. If you said one of the main notes in my perfume, blah, is rose, and this was there, I'd say yes.
Yeah.
I've got some rose.
It's but there's no.
It's like wearing a high vis jacket and saying, okay, you're not going to run me over because you can see me. I get a little bit of a clarity. It's not without complexity as well. I have to say, it does.
But there's none of that
green,
mossy, rooty, rich.
No, it's not mossy and
rich depth. But you can imagine if you had it amongst other things, perhaps if you had patchouli and some dark things filling up the bottom, this would provide a great.
That's the thing. In isolation, it is what it is. You combine that well with other things, and you put that in the hands of a master perfumer.
So as we said, that is a rose recreation. So what we're now going to smell are some constituent parts. So of the Rose Absolute, and I might put this up. I'll put up a GCMS of a Rose Absolute, and you will see there are lots and lots of chemicals go into a rose, and all different roses, Bulgarian rose, Turkish rose, that will all be slightly different, but there are some things that will have in common, and they will all have phenyl ethyl alcohol, citronellol, and geranium. So we're going to smell a bit of that.
Okay. So geranium is a big thing, isn't it?
Geraniol.
Geraniol,
which can come from geranium as well.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's quite a lot of overlap with geranium and rose. But anyway, we're going to smell phenyl ethyl alcohol. So this is a singular chemical. Mm-hmm. And this one is synthetic. So this is not natural. It does occur naturally in rose.
Yeah.
And you could isolate it naturally from rose, but this has been synthesized. I don't know what it's from. Probably a petrochemical. I'm not sure. But smell this. This is I'll just let you smell.
Interesting.
It's familiar, I think.
I get a big sort of green marzipan. It is familiar in sort of perfume memory somehow. The first thing I got was a sort of marzipan almond, kind of almond pasty quality.
It's weird, isn't it?
I mean, I don't get a rose connection necessarily.
I get a permanent marker quality.
Permanent marker. I
get a slight plummy quality, but there's also a weird kind of brightness to it. It's weird taking, in a way we've kind of taken it out of context of the rose.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting in itself. Again, but I don't get a rose connection, but I can understand how, in combination, maybe. Yeah, the marker thing, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's
very interesting.
When we smell all these three things together, you can see how they. So that was a synthetic. Now let's smell. So this is now citronellol. This is a natural isolate from. I don't know if it occurs in rose and it occurs in geranium and some other things. So I don't know what it's being isolated from. But it is a major component in rose.
Thank you. Oh, that's immediately more into a rose that I know. And
kind of slightly powdery, light, kind of.
Yeah. That has a sort of like rose cola vibe. Do you get a sort of weird effervescent cola-y?
There's a light fizzy
dandelion burdock.
But I definitely feel it's providing the kind of light, bright fizziness of rose. So if you wanted to overdose that aspect of the rose, if you wanted to make it really bright, perhaps because you were adding patchouli and amber, and you wanted to overdose the kind of bright side.
I have to say though, smelling that compared to the Turkish Rose, I'm instantly aware with that of how that could be overdone in a perfume. There's something about that I know if it was anything less, if it was anything more than a constituent part of a fragrance, and it became dominant, I would hate it.
But it never would be. But it's a building block. So now we have. So we've talked about phenyl ethyl alcohol, citronellol. Now we have geraniol, and I've actually got a natural version and a synthetic version. So the natural is a natural isolate from a rose or possibly from geranium, and then I've also got the synthetic version. I've never tried to compare them, so let's do that now. So this is geraniol.
I'm very curious about this, because this is one aspect of certain rose fragrances that I love.
Just bear in mind, geraniol, isn't explicitly linked to geranium, even though you get geranium and rose geranium, and there's definitely overlap.
It's quite fatty.
Yeah,
I get
slightly aldehydic.
I almost get that sort of the oil that you've just fried some donuts in.
Nice. It's more earthy, more green than rosy.
Yeah, I don't find that rosy.
That's natural. Do you not get it?
I don't really get a rose vibe.
So
I get something mimicking the sort of the slightly
the
bright,
one.
fresh thing. Which to me smells very, very similar, actually.
I couldn't discern any difference.
No, I mean, the only difference I would say is that I find this slightly more present than that. I find that a little bit harder work to smell. I find that a little bit bigger, a bit bolder.
But I mean, we are smelling single molecules, so it does get quite. This will be our last single molecule smelling for a bit, but it can get quite difficult smelling single molecules.
I mean, in terms of the profile of them, they're indistinguishable to me.
I mean,
I think the synthetic is bigger. The synthetic somehow just seems a little bit louder, just a few decibels.
I mean, for me, it's minuscule though. I mean,
I can't remember which is which now.
This is natural. That's synthetic. Do you not think that's distinctly rosy?
It's more rosy than it was at the start, actually.
So that's natural. Should we go back and smell our...
They're quite troubling.
Our rosy things. So here's our Turkish Rose Absolute.
See that just...
Thick, rich, earthy, complex, multifaceted.
Yeah, do you know what? When I smell that, it makes me realise I just want to spend more money on like the best rose you can buy. I mean, I have to say,
you just wear it
it's so beautiful. Yeah, it's so beautiful.
That was my Soy Super Bob's Your
I also get like a massive amount of tea in that now.
Yes, massively. I mean, now this is your Orris Givco. This is your Rose Givco. I also have an Orris one.
Very nice.
But it pales in comparison.
Do you know, that to me smells like a rose fragrance that I would expect to find in a really nice bath oil or something like that. That
Phenyl Ethyl
smells
Alcohol.
voluptuous. Yeah, still got that slight magic marker thing going on. That Turkish Rose is stunning.
So that's our Citronellol. Bright, lemony, slight. It feels like the citrus tea. Amazing. If you wanted to give the impression of a Thai rose, maybe you would go more with that.
Yeah.
To kind of
just to get that sort of brightness.
Do you want to move on to some sexy florals?
Yes. There's one in particular I'm really keen to smell from.
How about, Ylang Ylang? That's such a...
You snooze, you lose.
Yeah. Ylang
That's
Ylang,
the literal translation.
But, I think Ylang Ylang, you think Chanel No. 5.
Yeah.
But like a million fragrances. So this is an absolute...
Thank you.
I really... These florals they're really, really expensive.
Really?
they are so expensive. But they're fucking amazing, aren't they?
God, that's really good. Yeah, see, you need to wear these.
5 mil.
You need these in your perfume.
5 mil is like 50 quid or something.
Really? Crikey.
But that's
so beautiful though.
It's so beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely stunning.
Oh, fucking hell.
Really?
It's so beautiful.
See, throw that in with some of your Turkish Rose. Throwing a bit of Oakmoss in the base. I don't care if it's a catastrophe.
I mean,
it can't possibly be.
I mean, yeah. If you haven't tried buying essential oils, I mean, go to Hermitage or somewhere like that, and or Perfumer's Apprentice in America. I mean,
God, big bubblegummy tuberosy as well.
Bubblegum, banana-y, tuberosy, chewy, but also indolic. There's some bitter qualities.
Good. Like, that's so good. I didn't realise Ylang Ylang was like that.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Stunning.
And this is
it's like time travelling as well.
It's so like luxurious, like, oh god.
It's really luxurious. I'll tell you what, just for a weird sort of perverted exercise on my part, what is it like if you smell the two of them together?
What, rose and Ylang?
Yeah, just as a sort of a treat for your nose.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I mean, it's so reckless and silly, but I was curious to see what would be in the mix. That's really good. I didn't like florals once upon a time, like sort of the big florals.
Should we do something very... Let's do a couple of dark, dank ones now, shall we? Osmanthus.
No, I don't have a clue really what Osmanthus smells like, I have to say.
Well, it's quite particular, I would say. So this is an Osmanthus Absolute. This is fucking expensive. I've only got very little bit. I mean, I don't think I've actually used this in anything.
You're not buying big vats of this stuff?
No, I mean, and these I've just bought for reference points. This is another Hermitage Oils one.
Oh, wow.
So it's so... And I've always thought I don't like Osmanthus. And whenever you smell Osmanthus in a perfume, pretty much always it's going to be synthetic because it's incredibly expensive, more expensive than rose, really. So it's this kind of like dark...
Syrupy. That's not a million miles away from the rose.
But it's this kind of dark, dirty, leathery...
Maple, it's like a sort of maple syrup barbecue sauce, but very creamy. If you can have like a soapy barbecue.
But I get like a massive like fermented fruit, like plums that have been left out in the sunshine.
I mean, that to me smells like an area of someone's house that you shouldn't go, like a sort of basement with lots of interesting things growing, but slightly troubling.
Deep, sticky smell, like...
I get gloss paint as well.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine that this is natural smell, isn't it?
It makes me want to spend more time outside. Just sticking my nose.
It's really troubling. It's very
troubling. It's like it's dangerous. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be here. This is not my cozy environment at home in front of the fire.
Do you want a troubling one or a happy one?
A happy one. Otherwise, I'm.
This is one of my favourite smells in the world. Let's put my trousers down.
No. I'll let you guys get a room.
This is a Gardenia.
Oh, now Gardenia.
And when after I bought this Absolute, I then bought a Gardenia plant because it's like the best bits of Ylang Ylang and jasmine combined. And I didn't bring jasmine actually, but
she didn't want to come. That's really interesting. That's not what I expected at all. I'm friends with a singer who wears Gardenia Passion. I think
it's amazing. Like, it's super bright, super green, super sweet. Almost like all those things have come to a head and just...
Oh, yeah.
And again, whenever we smell Gardenia perfume, it's never Absolute.
I'm getting some quite good vintage vibes just from that as well.
Oh, it just... Again, it's a very, very expensive oil. But just buy yourself 1 ml or something of it just to try.
Just to smell now and then.
And
I've so tried as well.
Tinkering with a kind of fragrance which is kind of yuzu and incense, and then gardenia, and then and then a Cambodian oud underneath.
I love Cambodian
it's quite a clean, slightly sweet oud.
That is interesting because it is very clean and very legible.
But deeply complex.
Yeah.
Bright, hints of green, hints of sweetness.
It's like there's a line coming from the top right down to the bottom, and then at the bottom it's going to sort of open up and... Yeah.
Fucking beautiful.
That's really good. Gardenia. And again, if you said, oh...
Do you like Gardenia? You're like,
what are your thoughts on Gardenia perfume?
Should we move back to troubling?
Troubling, scary. Our journey is just beginning, I feel, in the perfume world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's probably a whole rabbit hole of Gardenia perfumes that we need to go down.
It's endless.
Well, the end comes when our noses drop
This
off.
is an extraordinarily strong one. And sorry, this is not diluted, but it's one when I've like put in at like 2% of the formula, it's obliterated everything else.
Oh, really? I mean, look at the colour.
So this is violet leaf, and you know, violet leaf, you never want as more than like 1% of the formula, even when I've tried to make my kind of Fahrenheit.
I mean, the sort of residue on there is so solid as well.
It looks a bit like you put it up your bum, doesn't it?
A little bit. And it smells a little bit. No, it doesn't. No, it smells beautiful, actually. Oh, very oily again.
Really super oily, super petrol-y, cabbagey.
Cabbagey, dank.
Really mega dank.
Not a million miles away from the Osmanthus in terms of that troubling.
But it's like, it's a relationship to the Oakmoss, isn't it? But it's kind of more so.
I can see the Oakmoss and that being.
It's mega cabbage.
Bedfellows.
Like, do you not think it's mega cabbage? It smells like.
No, mega cabbage is the cabbage that outlived Liz Truss. Oh, that's so good though. And tobacco green.
Massive, yeah.
See, I would never ever in a million years have thought violet leaf was quite like that. I always thought it was something very, very sort of sharp and piercing and bright and gassy.
That's
a lot darker than I thought.
But you can smell this thing. Can you see its role in Green Irish Tweed or Fahrenheit? I mean, it's got a major role, I would say. But it's just. I've tried to make versions of both of those fragrances, but I've realised that, you know, this is a tiny, you know, 0.5, 0.25% of the formula.
I can see that. I can see how that would work, though. I mean, the skill of making something like that in a perfume and using it for the effect, whilst sort of like rounding off the smell itself. The effect of it, though, as a sort of bright, shiny.
I think the first time I tried it, I put it in at like 4% of the formula, and it obliterated everything. Right. What do you think? Beautiful. I'm just thinking of time. Should we go on to resins? I've got Champaca.
I'd love to smell the Champaca.
You want to smell the Champaca?
To be fair, just because I've been wearing Mandarava recently from Prin. I'm really just thinking, Champaca is something I need to get to know.
It's amazing. I mean,
it was a Tom Ford fragrance, Champaca.
Absolutely, yeah.
I never tried.
Sort of in between Gardenia and Ylang. Really amazing. So this is Michaelia Champaca. There are red and yellow Champaca. I can't remember which one this is, but this is Michaelia Champaca.
That's really serious, isn't it?
It's serious, but like loads of smile and brightness and.
Really beautiful. I mean, just that in a composition.
You see how close it is to Ylang Ylang?
Yeah. Not as big, I think.
Well, not as sweet, I think.
A bit more on the side of citric edge, I think, as well. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Oh, I fucking love it.
Just a big white floral with all of those things thrown in. Some Oakmoss.
Just one more floral, but this one is a synthetic, and I wanted to include it because it's such an important and significant synthetic. So this is Lyral, and if you've heard the term Lyral, you will know that it is basically it is banned to the same extent that Oakmoss is banned. So you're allowed to have 0.02% of it in fragrances, and so this is a lily of the valley. So lily of the valley is a flower from which you cannot make an absolute or an essential oil. So whenever you smell lily of the valley, it is synthetic. And Lyral might be used for a long time because it's quite strong and quite long-lasting. Now basically banned, but it's so ubiquitous. I mean, it's just in absolutely everything. As I was saying, for an example, in Tuscan leather, it was about 10% of Tuscan leather, which you think of this kind of dusky leather, and yet it's actually, if you look at a formula for it, it's mostly florals and musk. It might be difficult to smell it after all those big kind of sweet things. because it's quite a big molecule. It's very long lasting.
Oh, I'm getting it. Yeah. It's funny when you close your eyes and you picture, and I can remember the smell of Tuscan leather.
I mean,
I totally get it.
That's just one fragrance. I mean,
but I totally get it though.
It's probably in every masculine fragrance in the 90s and lots more.
Because it's got some teeth. It's got a bit of bite. Sort of bright and
but
shiny,
it's
but
bright
also
and it's
edgy.
It's such an important building block. It's much more. I think it's much more difficult to smell aroma chemicals on their own, like single chemicals. That's why I wanted to get the rose ones out of the way at the beginning. Anyway, Lyral, massively important, difficult to smell.
Why can you not get a natural extract from a lily of the valley?
I don't know. I mean, the other thing which you could have smelt is what hydroxycitronellol, which is now I think what quite a lot of people use as a substitute for Lyral, which is another lily of the valley aroma chemical.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, should we move on to something you definitely can smell?
Yes.
So we're moving on from florals to resins, and
these are the building blocks, largely, aren't they? Well, not the building blocks, but the.
So this is a hugely significant. We're going to talk about Labdanum. This is Labdanum from Albervier. So really central to your amber accord. I fucking love Labdanum. I mean, love it. I just absolutely love it.
I mean, this is such a beautiful part of so many perfumes that we love, isn't it? That sort of final chapter.
Yep.
Unmistakable.
Like sticky, leathery, golden grahamy, rubber ball as well, slightly petrolly, rich patchouli, earthy.
Do you know, the only thing with Labdanum that I struggle with sometimes is when I feel it's veering, and it depends on my mood, but veering too much into the sweet camp. I need it to kind of constantly be brought back.
Well, that's interesting because
otherwise it gets a bit foody somehow to me.
Well, I mean, I do think there is a foodie. Yeah. You know, I said kind of golden grams. I think, well, if you were building an amber accord, you would almost certainly include some vanillin, which would make this even sweeter. Yeah,
well, that's my thing with Labdanum. Sometimes I find it too sweet, but I love this one. This is very kind of steering down the middle, and the sweetness is more. It's more of an edge rather than being sickly sweet.
Let's just smell a little bit of Cistus. So Cistus is from the same plant as Labdanum, but Labdanum is from the resinoids, so from the resin, whereas the Cistus is an absolute from the flowers and possibly like the twigs and stuff like that. I mean, not a million miles away.
No, absolutely. It's got that same sharpness. Oops. Not a million miles away at all. So this is at the base of something like Ambra aurea, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's at the base of every sheepra as well. I mean, pretty much.
Oh.
So, I mean, and I'm just indulging myself because I love Labdanum. Oops. Oh, no. So I'm going to have two more natural products which are derived from Labdanum, and they're not really significant in the use of perfumery, but I just really love them. So this is Ambrein. So this is produced by Beyond. So it's nothing natural.
Wow.
So it is produced from Labdanum, but it's kind of got that golden grahams, like it's got a burnt caramel.
Yeah.
Kind of ramped up.
Oh God, that's really good.
And some of the rubber beach ball quality pulled back a little bit.
But it's still there, that rubbery green aspect. Oh, that's really stunning. Did you say this is a natural?
Yeah. It's produced from Labdanum. Like, I'm not sure what they do. They like purify it or they remove something from it. fucking good though, isn't it?
That's really stunning. You get a sort of slight licorice.
Oh yeah,
aspect.
massive licorice, like burnt toffee, like toffee cinder.
Completely edible.
And when I've been tinkering, trying to make like Shalimar reconstructions,
that's got to be in there.
That's what I've put in. And sorry, I'm just. This is pure indulgence. This is another one of my favourites. It's the same thing. It's something else from Labdanum. This is hydrocarboresine from Bioland.
And what do we do with hydrocarbon resin?
Well, I mean, just have it's the same kind of thing, but so it's really similar to the other. It's just a bit more burnt.
Oh yeah.
I just love it.
See, that for me would be it's not a question of picking one, but that would be the one that I would gravitate to because it's got the sticky sweet.
That's why I've got such a big bottle of it.
Yeah.
It
has the smoky.
But it's got really smoky, and you could see how that could be part of an incense accord.
Yeah.
Or any kind of like if you wanted to make an oud accord, you could see that becoming part of it.
Yeah.
Like dark, sticky, burnt, rich. I love it.
That's really, really good. It is that smoky, charred around the edges.
Super smoky, thing. Like it's almost on fire. Even if you were making like just like a bonfire record that wasn't even very ambery, you could see that going into it, couldn't you?
100%.
So, carrying on, if you're going to make an amber accord, you definitely need benzoin. So benzoin, I've got a bit of benzoin resin. I don't know how much you can see that. But this is benzoin resin. And I've also I made a tincture here. So I diluted the benzoin in some Perfume's alcohol so that I could put it on things. And benzoin was one, I remember, I think the first time I had benzoin was Coromandel. I think it was on the note list of that.
Yeah. That's a lovely fragrance as well. Yeah. Chocolatey.
It's so familiar, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you could see how it could segue from Labdanum to coumarin as well.
Yeah, I mean that's an ideal base. Chocolatey, rich, complex.
It's like vanilla-y, but without the sweetness, isn't it?
It's got the creaminess.
Creamy, rich, sexy.
It's like certain wines that some wines will go into a very creamy kind of direction, even if they're big herbaceous things. They've got sort of chocolate cream running around it.
But you can see how you could combine that with either your Labdanum or your hydrocarbon resin to make an amber accord.
Yeah, totally. A beautiful amber accord. Oh, that's really good, isn't it?
I mean, traditionally, your bog standard amber accord would be kind of Labdanum, benzoin, and vanillin, like your absolute kind of really simple one. Maybe some Myrrh.
I need to smell something again because I just keep getting whiffs of it, and it's bringing to mind something really strong from my childhood, and I just can't picture it, and it's going to annoy me. It's like a sweet. Do you know, I can't remember, but I will at some point. Incredible.
So, carrying on with our amber accord, if you've got your kind of, the richness of Labdanum, the sweetness of your vanilla, the creaminess of your benzoin, you probably want a bit of. Oh my god.
That is solid.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Is that honey?
So this is Myrrh. So it's just. I think it's a bit too cold. Yeah, I think it's a bit too cold. I don't know if you can see this. It's not actually that diluted, so it's kind of like just stuck to the stick. But you can still smell it.
Sticky, honey-esque.
So that's going to provide some of the bitterness to your amber accord.
Slightly minty.
There's a bracing quality, isn't there?
Yeah. I get a big minty vibe coming off that. I think my nose is completely haywire at the moment, so I might be completely wrong. There's a slightly edgy, fresh.
I would say there's a massively medicinal quality to it.
Yeah.
And if you what's that Andy Tower? The Lone Star Memories, for instance, I think has some of this medicinal. Can go in a slightly bandagey direction sometimes.
Yeah. Sort of like a spearmint or something.
But there is a definite, like, compared to all the previous resins, there's definitely something. There's a high pitched.
Yeah, it's bright and pingy and legible.
But that's why you can see it forming an important part alongside all of those thick base notes.
Yeah. You need the balance, don't you, of these things that are sort of quite silvery, and then some things that are sort of darker and richer. God, yeah, that's really good. Where's the bottle?
That goes there. Right. So, Oppoponax?
Yes.
So, Oppoponax, sometimes called sweet myrrh.
Sweet myrrh.
Sweet myrrh. So we're expecting something in that kind of ballpark.
I'm expecting something myrrhy and sweet.
Hold that. I've got the problem with some of these. Oh fucking hell! They sometimes kind of solidify. Okay, perfect.
Give it a dunk.
I mean, only slightly sweeter. It's still very bitter and very like.
Wow. That is one of the most troubling things I've smelled today, I think.
Yeah.
That is very... That I don't like that. That's very weird and strange. I don't know what that is. Unless my nose has had a nervous breakdown. That's cold. That's like cold,
petrol.
Rusty pipe or something. Do you know what I mean? I get something...
Yeah.
I don't want to scratch myself on that.
That's quite troubling, isn't it?
I get something weird there. That to me is like the smell of a freshly cleaned abattoir. Yeah. It's, they've cleaned it really well, and they're using some sort of strong, bleachy...
I know what you mean, yeah.
Very silvery, very piercing.
Metallic, like...
I don't like it. Or maybe I'm not meant to like it, but it's not something I would naturally gravitate to.
Should we move on?
Oh... I don't like that.
Let's have another Styrax. So Styrax, it's a similar kind of family to benzoin, but I really remember when we first smelled this. Oh yeah, I mean that's troubling as well. I remember when we first smelt it at with Sarah McCartney, and I thought, I said, is that a civet or something like deeply animalic?
Do you know what that's like to me? That's like waking up from an operation many years ago and having a gas mask on that's made of rubber, and the inside of the gas mask has been cleaned with like antiseptic wipes and magic marker saying
it's like
hospital property.
It's super like rubbery, bandagey.
Yeah.
But also there's something quite fetid about it. Like it's quite like.
I mean, ordinarily I would love that because I love magic markers. I love the smell of boot polish.
But it's.
That's how you use this thing in a perfume, though.
But
that's
it's so strong.
Genius, isn't it?
It's a touch of that to maybe,
This is what I think is really incredible, is the fact that there are things that we can smell here, and I can smell Oppoponax and go, I hate that. And in a perfume, in the right proportions, the right quantities, in the right hands, you can have a masterpiece that you've fallen madly in love with.
We're going to finish with something really, really lovely. So this is one kind of olive barn and one incense. This is like the most expensive incense, basically. Royal Green Hojari incense. That's really, really beautiful, I think. Like, it's so...
that is lovely.
It's really, I mean, as you'd imagine, it's green, it's kind of herbaceous, It's citrusy. It's
oily again, like beautifully oily.
It's really spiritual. Like, I mean,
I don't get like a big incense vibe. This is the weird thing. I get the stuff that makes the incense, but I don't get the smoky. I don't get the sort of smoky association.
Well, that's the thing. I think, you know, when we think of incense accords, they've got lots of other things in them.
Yeah.
But if you smell a lot of Labdanum and incense oils, they don't have that bright, burnt, woody quality.
And that's very clean somehow. That's not what I was expecting.
It has a very piney quality.
Piney. Oh. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
But very bright.
Quite austere.
Yes, very, very, very austere, but quite spiritual, I think.
Yeah. And again, in the right combination. That's beautiful. It would be very transportative.
With some hinoki and some cypress, and a kind of like clean woody accord.
I would need some vanilla or something underneath that, just to add some creaminess to the bright.
Or some coumarin and Oakmoss, just to give some.
Oh, always the Oakmoss. That's a given. That's really good. I mean, I can tell the quality of that. So it's not what I expected at all.
The Oakmoss, I think you might struggle to smell it now. You're just getting the kind of deep, dank cabbaginess.
Yeah, I think my nose is slightly sort of
assaulted.
Yeah, because I think I'm smelling things. I think with 30% of my nose functioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't smell it at all, I think. And that's Oakmoss.
Yeah.
That's real Oakmoss, and I'm struggling to smell it because. But I mean, how many things? We've smelled a lot of stuff here.
A lot of stuff.
This is raw material. This is not like perfume in a bottle. This is raw material.
Some of them are diluted, but you know.
We're heroes, really, aren't we? This is a sacrifice we're making to bring these things to you.
But I mean, you can see.
The Oakmoss is really.
You know, it's really. I find it kind of. It's like Oakmoss. I find it incredibly. Rewarding and pleasurable to try all these materials. Most of these have been, unlike the last video we did of this, most of them have been naturals, but I mean, some of the florals, they're very, very expensive, but they're amazing, and you could just wear a swipe of them on your hand. As an oil, right?
I mean, for me, I have to say the standout and the thing that I would definitely want to buy just for my own pleasure is that by a country mile. That's the thing that rots my world. That's the rose.
The Robote Turkish Rose.
I mean, I love that so much. And again, I say I'm in a bit of a rose phase at the minute, so I'm smelling. You know, I'm wearing lots of rose perfumes.
But I was saying to you, but if you're going to make a rose perfume, even a rose accord, you would never just whack that in. You would do something else. You would add a bit of.
I would. That's the thing, because I don't know. When I'm tinkering at home, I've started like tinkering with bits and bobs, and I've got little sort of sandalwood in this kit. You know, but I smell that. I think okay, that needs to be at least 50%, and then maybe 50%.
You're then making
Oakmoss.
An extraordinarily expensive perfume. I mean,
and it would also be illegal, wouldn't it?
Almost
50%
but nothing. I mean, even your most expensive niche perfumes are never going to have more than like. I saw Christophe Laudemel posted something about one of the Strangers NYC fragrances. He said, "Well, you know, it's expensive, but it is 6% rose." So,
yeah.
I mean, and that is extremely high. I mean, a designer fragrance is never going to have more than like 1% rose.
Yeah,
if that.
And that quality is really beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's been fun.
That's fascinating. To smell these raw materials.
As you probably noticed, this was pure self-indulgence on our part. Just
because you can't smell. Well, you can get hold of these, but you can't smell what we're smelling here. You know, so we appreciate you kind of sitting there with us and watching and just soaking it up.
So, I mean, in terms of so a lot of the naturals are from Hermitage, which is a company which used to be in the UK, which is now based in Italy. Perfume is Apprentice in America. It's absolutely fantastic. Eden Botanicals in America, I've never actually tried. I've never bought anything from, but they do seem to have a lot. But the other American one is Perfumer's Supply House, which I've used quite a lot, and they are that's that one, Perfumer's Supply House, and they're pretty reasonably priced.
I've got a Oppoponax on my finger. Damn it!
You should get that seen too.
I don't like a Oppoponax now.
Who knew? You suggested I call my first child.
I know, I'm sorry about that, because that would have been horrendous.
Anyway.
I mean, it's so deeply alarming. Is that not just very troubling and strange?
Yeah, it's deeply medicinal and
I don't like it.
yeah, troubling. Right. Anyway, if you would, if you'd like us to do more videos along the lines of this, or variations on a theme, let us know.
Yeah, preferably one without any Oppoponax. I'm kidding. No, I'm sure it's in a perfume. It's great. And I've got perfumes. You've got perfumes with Oppoponax. We love them. So.
Has its place.
I mean, the main thing I've learned now is not to pick my nose with this finger for the next half an hour.
Or a couple of days.
Because I will be in trouble. But yeah, no, this is what perfume is all about. It's maybe not as glamorous as it looks in the shops. You know what I mean?
And also, we are,
the trial and error.
We're really just kind of skirting the surface, and it's not going to be a case of dolloping 1, 2, or 3 of these things in. There's far more nuance and study and science and hard work.
It's an art. Perfume is an art, isn't it?
It's an art, but it's a skill, and there is like music, there is technique.
Yeah. How are you so gifted? No, well, I'm not gifted. It's practice. It is amazing.
But till next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Happy sniffing.